Vanessa, for our next presentation, as there could possibly be a conflict on my part there. I wouldn't know. Oh, yeah.
So at this time, we're going to hear from Travis Bond with Continuum Labs.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your patience. I know it's been a long meeting. I want to bring you up to date, certainly as part of what we're doing. And I will be shorter than I was last time, so I know you'll all be happy to hear that. So one of the things I wanted to do, and this is a slide that we held ourselves to, such that we have some common benchmarks in terms of what we're doing. And have we been keeping plan? Have we been doing what we said we would do? And if so, we want to say, and if not, we want to also recognize why not. So basically, the only goals that we didn't really meet in terms of a March plan was the grand opening. And the reason there specifically is that the common area furniture was not in yet. It is now. And so we are planning on trying to do something at the end of the month, permitting for dates and some other things that are going on in sales and marketing. But currently what we're doing in this month, or all of those are in place, and then we'll talk about those some more in some other slides. One of the things that I want to continue to remind the board as well is that we are working on a product that has two components. One is the software, and then one is a labor component of skilled individuals who does the record retrieval services and basically acts as the agent for patients to acquire and own their own records versus those being siloed at hospitals and so forth. Our products have now reached the development stage to where we are now moving into a sales and marketing phase. This is a very important time because this is where now we start to generate revenue from the products and the services that we have been incubating. Evolving to revenue is going to start on the 26th, and we're launching here at the Relay for Life event in Hardin County. And as you know, that event is with the American Cancer Society, and is recognized to raise money to help the victims afflicted with cancer. And as you know, about 600,000 people a year die of cancer in the United States, and it's the second leading cause of death in the U.S. This is a very natural fit for us because our product is used by people who have health conditions more so than perhaps those that are just monitoring a healthy lifestyle, to which we have features and benefits for those as well. But the point of it is one of the great differentiators of what we do is we are family health record. So all of us know somebody who is afflicted with some condition such that they're more of a higher utilizer of healthcare, and that they've used the family and social network to then deliver and coordinate care among themselves. We have identified in what we are building in the software, and that you will see on the release that comes out on the 26th, is a shopping cart and a payment processing environment. So this is where now we do get to charge for the subscription of the software, as well as charge for the healthcare assistance, formerly known as concierge, the healthcare assistance that you then can go and buy record service going forward, as well as other services going back historically. We are partnering up with rare organizations to do this, and how we are doing that is such that we have a unique campaign that we're calling Giving Back. And what that does is that we give $10 for every subscription that we have back to a rare disease organization. So it is a way for them to identifiably raise cash, which rare organizations have a difficult time doing because they don't get the notoriety of, say, a cancer society, or a leukemia, or a diabetes, or something that's far more on the national stage and is well developed. And as you know, our COO has a rare disease afflicted child. Her only child, 14, is now in her third year of a disease known as juvenile dermatomyositis, and she actually sits on the board. And so one of the companies that we're partnering up with is CureGen. And so it makes for a unique bonding opportunity from a user experience to feel like you are giving part. You're giving something to someone else, helping them at the same time. You're acquiring your own data, you're owning it, as well as now you're able to coordinate healthcare with your family and loved ones. We have, and I ask you to be sensitive to this because we think that it is some sensitive information. I think that we have taken a position, and as CEO, I felt more comfortable with trying to share as much information as I can with this board for you to be comfortable in what we're doing, and that I hope that you think we're being good stewards of your money. But these are organizations that would represent multi-million-dollar contracts. And so these type of organizations are rushing to healthcare to try to find a way that they can do what's called population management. And when they talk about population management, they're talking about the patient and its family or social support group that has now left the hospital or the treatment setting. And so they recognize that trying to reach the whole family, it's kind of funny how we go around. We used to have doctors come to the house, see the patient and educate the family, and then leave. Now it's the patient comes to the exam room, leaves, and they're expected to be the conduit. But they're recognizing with Obamacare and other forces in healthcare that they're trying to now shift the information and the support to more of the family. And so these organizations all are incentivized to keep readmissions down and to have a piece of software to where the patients and their family are engaged. The reason that this is different from the systems they already have in place in the hospital is that if you go to the hospital and you are allowed some type of access, it's only you, the patient. It's not you and your family, and it's only a read-only. You don't get to change it or make corrections. So there's a big shift, and they want different data. I'm going to point out one thing. All Children's Hospital, we had meetings with them last week in Tallahassee. This is the Moffitt equivalent for children. So if you have cancer in Florida, you go to All Children's. And so what they have is they're very, very pro-patient and the patient's family, because as a child, you don't fend for yourself. Someone is fending for you, even if it's the state or a foster system. So they're already very much dispositioned to always treating the family because they recognize that there are minorities involved. We have a lot of relationships that we have now created and have had in All Children's. And so we actually have demonstrations with them in their IT department on May 8th. These represent the longer sales cycles. And we now have coming out in the 26th where people can actually run their credit card and do it individually. That is the shorter sales cycle. So we hope to have a blend of the longer, bigger fish, if you will, and the shorter, easier to catch fish, if you will, from the shopping cart in the online environment. The blending of those two, I think, is a solid, well-balanced risk in terms of the sales and marketing. And again, I just want to reinforce that 1.6 is a release, will be out on Friday the 26th. That makes our 7th release of this product. And so we have kept up very aggressively with development so that we are offering features that are worth a person paying $5 a month individually or $20 for a family per month up to 8 people. The other thing that we're doing is that we talked about Dashes as being a sandbox, and it is an environment that we have used to train QA and a lot of other people and designers and marketing people through the TechRiver environment. And so the question is what are we using as a precursor, or what are we using as a lab, if you will, to teach people and let them experience how you take a product from research and development to testing to beta and then into an open market. And one of the exciting thresholds that we met last Friday is that we have now taken the first version of Dashes and it's now on constructors. And so this is a very large construction firm based out of Tampa, Florida that does upper end scale building. And so now they have their own private labeled version of Dashes where they track their project on Dashes just like we did at TechRiver. And are able to meet with their subs, with their project managers on site. They take pictures, they're able to comment back and forth. They have a layer of communication that's just outside of an email and attachments, which is very much archaic and very hard to sort of keep track of. I want to remind you that part of the investments that we're making and part of what's changing in the market as it becomes more and more competitive out there in terms of the mobile landscape is that 95% of us who have a smartphone are 97% of the time within arm's length of us. That is a significant number of on-demand. So as I said, I think last month, is that this has now become our second screen. And what that means, I mean, practically, we don't even go to the bathroom without this thing anymore in the sense that we expect to be online all the time. And so when I say we, I'm talking about collectively the world. And so mobility is a very important part to what we're doing at CareSync. And let me just also underscore this differentiator. As some people say, well, how is CareSync different and what do we do differently? Well, certainly just at the web level or your desktop level, we have knowledge databases. We have the services for record retrieval. We have now the ability, as of our last release, to fax or chart. right there. It's like, oh yeah, I'm coming to a doctor's appointment. I can fax my chart ahead of time. We just had one of our employees whose husband had to take one of the daughters to an emergency clinic, and he said, well, I don't know all their meds. It was faxed ahead of time. I mean, these sorts of things are now being translated into mobile, and so you expect one experience of convenience at the desk as you now do in mobility. And so this is the precursor not only to the ability to fax and now do journal and tasking, but at the end of the month, we also come out with appointment management. So now you're going to have real tools where a patient, when he goes or he or she goes to the physician, you can actually be recording what they're saying you have or you need to do as tasks. So we know this in our market is creating what we call stickiness. And so this is the ability, or this is the influence rather, for a person to come back and want to use the software. And so if we've integrated mobility into your healthcare, then you have information in there that becomes more valuable for you and your care team. Some updates on Tech River Park. And again, remember that Continuum has not just said we're going to build some software and we're going to hire some jobs, but we said that we were going to do two big other things, right? And one of them was that we were going to act as consultants and we were going to spearhead the energy and effort to design this technology park. And so we have been doing that, and we reached some great milestones in the last month. Common furniture in, looks beautiful and it's gorgeous. Custom designed floor and the cafeteria and so forth. I mean, it really looks like something anyone would be impressed by if they came here and they were thinking along the lines of technology. This space mimics what would be in their head from a visual standpoint. Secondly, the TRUE, or we call it TRUE, but that's Tech River University. We said that we would train people, and that's part of what we have done with this inaugural class, is that we would give them the skill sets and the immediate access to what they're working on as a learning environment. But now we are now developing syllabuses, to which is now kind of exciting because I've heard from some of the presentations today that people said, I need to train, but we're going to move people here and they need certain skills. You don't want to do that on the job if they have other distractions. You want to put them in a classroom environment. I think that one of the things about Tech River, even if the class isn't necessarily technology-based in terms of what you would make a mental connection, but it is an environment that fosters it. It has the cafeteria next to it. It has all the infrastructure from telecommunications and the ability for people to even teach classes remotely as instructors. One of the things that we've done at Continuum is we just taught the class in Asia. Well, we did it from a telepresence point of view, and we started at 4:30 in the morning. And so these sorts of infrastructure things are helpful. And then I would say the last thing that we felt that is very interesting about how we are developing this month our syllabus is that we have been looking at programs from the University of Florida and others that are actually teaching classes on agriculture and technology. And so we think that there is a way to keep this classroom full, not just in the things that we've talked about from necessarily the application development or design or some of those skill sets, but is actually having a place that says, okay, what is the latest on this or that, and have a forum or a place where many people can come together and feel like that, that they're getting the instruction led and that the resources are here for that. So you would expect to see some web syllabuses and some advertising as part of what we're doing at Continuum to help foster the Tech River University. And then lastly, we've installed our own furniture. And as you can tell from the receipts, we ended up just buying it from IKEA. And we had a ton of furniture installed, literally. And we all had a great time and we assembled it ourselves. So I think hopefully you will see that as a testament to how we try to conserve money at every level. And so when we can, we will go as inexpensively as possible. And then lastly, one of the things that is certainly a hallmark and requirement is physical access. And so the whole thing with the video cameras, the swipe cards, those things that record access to and from, those things that replace the traditional key and lock is 75% complete, and I believe that they're on track to complete that by the end of the week. That certainly then gives us physical control and access for people to feel safe in the building. And then a familiar slide with updated numbers. So we have gone on to certainly do significant bugs and feature codes. We've done a lot of designs, as you can see, is 40. We have done several code pushes, and we've done several mobile pushes as well. One of the things that I want to say here is that Donald, you're right. It is about jobs. Sure is. I mean, I could not agree with you anymore. And one of the things that you'll see is that we do still continue to add people. And so I hope that you will trust in me that our organization continues to invest in a product that exists here in Hardee County, and that is working in a segment called healthcare. And that's a $2.2 trillion portion of the gross national product of our country per year, or about between 18%. 30 billion is spent alone in the U.S. in Florida. And so these jobs, while they might not be traditional agricultural jobs, they are jobs that at least a population between 15 and 35 certainly identify with more readily because of technology as they come up. I really believe that as we continue to improve the product and reach that what we're doing in family health records, that we will continue to see those numbers grow. And so we have committed to make all new hires that we can here in Hardee and train them at the same time. And so I feel like now with the classroom having furniture and other things, we'll continue to accelerate it more. I will give you one just anecdotal piece of an experience that I had at Hardee High last couple weeks ago. I spoke at a class all day long, and actually had some kids that asked about if we did internships. And one of the kids that came to me in the morning, which I was taken back by, but I think it's important to note, is that he's in Mrs. Ware's class and he's trying to get his Office certification through the high school, and it's Microsoft Office. And so that is an important certification to have on your resume. But he asked, he said, I come from a low-income family. And basically what he was trying to say to me is our whole family is trying to earn money. So we hired him on the spot, but I said he had to pass his PowerPoint certification first. He passed it within a week, and he sent me a job and he started Monday. Every class that I went through, I offered jobs unabashedly. Anybody that wanted to come work for our company as an intern or any other capacity from the high school was more than welcome, because these kids are hungry, they know technology natively, and they do have value. And so I just want to say that we will continue to do that, because that is good for us. Because when you have energy like that knows technology, they're immediately of value. And then so training them and mentoring them is certainly something that really, it's a favor to all. And so one of the things that I asked some of these students, I said, well, what do you plan on doing when you leave? How much money do you think you would earn? And some said they certainly would go to college, and some were some really bright students that were already doing college classes. But many of them said, well, we're for Burger King for 7 something an hour, or we're this or we're that. So let me say this. If I had to tell you one of the core soul things that I want as a person is to create technologies and get jobs, there is nothing more aligned with my human DNA than doing what I'm doing right now. I would love to continue to see a company that goes into the high school and college level here to recognize that you don't have to go away if you want the skill set to stay. If you think you need to go away to get a 4-year degree and you want some advanced sort of stuff, you can stay here. But as Doug, you had mentioned, there are MCSEs that make good money. We have full intentions to offer the MCSE training certification process under Intech River University. We will train certified engineers here. And so those are things that we will do in concert with what we're doing. We're not just making healthcare software. We're trying to lead the way to be those people that are always in the tech part and trying to foster what it's like to be in technology and try to aggregate people to us. And so it's a bigger scope. We enjoy doing it. There's probably 8 of us from Tampa today that are working side by side, because our development schedule is second to no one's in terms of velocity or speed. We are churning out a new piece of software every 14 days. And that means that some of us are working 18, 19-hour days, including developers and so forth, to be certain that we are competitive in the market. And so I feel comfortable that we are now a month away from actually being in a position to where we can interact with consumers for credit cards and payments and actually do the concierge services that we talked about that we were going to do, which we felt we would hire only those people here in Hardee to do those concierge services. Hopefully those with nursing backgrounds at first, those that have gone through Finder and some other organizations who have been touched and trained already in healthcare. And so we're selling to the national stage. And so that is very helpful in terms of lowering the risk. And so I feel comfortable that we are on a very aggressive track and that we've met just about every timeline or benchmark that I said that we would do thus far. Thank you for your time.
You do have the draw request for this month in your packet. I think it was sent to you on Friday, so hopefully you've had a chance to review it. I'll be glad to answer any questions, as well as Mr. Bond will. But additionally, I wanted to let the board know that Mr. Bond, Mr. Hernandez, and Mr. Evers and I met last week to do a 6-month review on where exactly we were with the deliverables of the contract and what the status was. Mr. Bond gives monthly updates to tell what they're doing each month, but we really wanted to look at the contract and see what those deliverables were. Next month, I'll be coming back to you to make a report on what our suggestions are, a status update as what has been accomplished in these past 6 months, as well as the projection for the next 6 months, with more specific dates attached to it, more specific definitions and recommendations for the project. But I apologize that we didn't get it done this month, because this month was when we should have done the 6-month review, but we couldn't get it scheduled a meeting until last week. So next month we'll come back with a more thorough 6-month review report. Question?
Yeah, I've had 2 complaints. One is that this draw request is not always on the website every month. It's just sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Last month is currently on there. I mean, they're all on there
Yeah,
currently.
I don't know, I don't look on there before I
Okay.
wait to hear about.
Yeah, we don't put it on there until after the board meeting, until it's acknowledged by the board. So if they're looking for it prior to that, it will not be on there, but it is on there.
The other thing was that, the percent of the budget is not always completed. I see this month is not on there at all.
I don't understand.
That, the far right-hand line usually has, on each draw line, it'll have the percent of the budget. And this month is not on there at all. Some of them's missing, and some of them's there, some of them's missing.
I'm sorry, I'd have to look at a previous month, but I don't remember there ever being a percent of the budget listed on these
Oh, yeah.
draw requests.
Oh, yeah, it has been. And this month,
Neither myself nor Travis is that familiar to us, so I'm not sure.
well,
I mean, I can tell you that, as of this month, there has been approximately $1.9 million that has been drawn from the total $3 million grant. That's one of the things that we talked about in the meeting and what will be happening over the next 6 months, with the remainder of the money. But I don't remember the percentages ever being listed on there.
yeah, on some of these draw lines, they'd have a percent of the budget. Most of them would be filled in, but there'd be like 5 or 6 of them that didn't have that information, the percent of the budget. And they were complaining to me about it. So,
Donald, are you talking about these reports?
yeah, this one,
Where do you see percentages?
well, it's not on there. It usually
Well,
is right here.
this is a prior month, so I'm asking you where that information has come into play before.
Well, I'll bring you the one, I got at home then of the prior. You want me to?
I mean, if that's an issue,
It's not an issue with me, but I'm getting blasted about it out on Little Street.
Okay, I mean, I'll be glad to answer any questions from anybody that does have those questions. If you want to tell them, give me a call, because like I said, again, myself or Mr. Bond don't recollect the percentages ever being included on the draw request, but I'll be glad to go back and
When we
look.
produce
Well, I
it,
never seen it on there.
we can produce a history of draw requests. It's simple math. All
Right,
you have to do is take each month and divide it into $3 million and produce the percentage of draw requests.
Right.
We'll produce a schedule and put it on the website.
And they are online. Like I said, they don't go in there until after the board meeting, but last time I checked, all of the ones that have been previously acknowledged by the board are online.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah's gonna come.
I have, Madam Chair, I have a question,
Okay.
about the draw.
Okay.
Couple questions. listed in here, you've got, Lions Club, Rotary Club, membership fees, and things like that. Is that appropriate? I mean, I'm not, nothing against the organization, I mean, I'm just fine with that. Is that an appropriate, expenditure of this money to join civic clubs with grant money? I'm just.
I will let Mr. Bond answer that, but,
I'm looking at him.
okay, I mean, my 2 cents, is another part of this project is getting this business involved in the community and integrated into Hardin County.
I think that's a great idea.
So, I mean, I understand what your concerns are, but I also think that it's kind of that thin line of when we've funded a company and they are in charge of deciding what the best use of those funds are with monitoring from the board. It's kind of been the position so far that we developed those criteria, and as long as they're meeting those criteria and showing us monthly reports, that we weren't really gonna take a position of telling them what was the best business practices for their business to accomplish what they wanted to do. Like I said, that's a really thin line because it is public money going to a private company, and you have to respect the public as well as the private. But I can tell you that that's the motivation behind them joining those clubs, is they're trying to get intimately involved in the community and doing it in a local level. But do you have anything to add?
I would just say that, you know, in the absence of any specific exclusionary language, that we have been encouraged and felt like it was in the best interest of the investment that you're making in these people, is that it is part of marketing back into the local businesses and so forth, to sit there and say, this is what we're doing. If you think it's an expense that you don't want to see, then you just need to tell me how to handle it. If that means if I have to write a check out on my personal account, it's not big dollars, but it is. I thought our organization was doing what it was told to do, and so our marketing people, our business specialist people are being sent to Toastmasters at the same time that they go and they make presentations to these organizations. So it's also fostering their public speaking skills. And so from us, it's more of a broad point of saying we are putting money back into the community, just like when we buy local signs, we get it from the stitching guy down the street. I mean, we try to spend money locally at every given opportunity for anything that we do. So I wouldn't know natively on where the Lions Club would be different than the sign guy, which would be different than ads in the paper, which wouldn't be different than a blog, or, you know, but if you want to give me language, then we would be more than happy to abide by it.
I'll buy an explanation. What is the continuing relationship with the former LifeSync? I see it's listed on here.
And I think that's very valid. And I do not mind talking about that at all. And if there are any LifeSync answers that you think I might know, ask, and I would give you those answers. Specifically, when we had acquired their assets, which was principally Blue Water, and then assumed their liabilities, which in part were their performance note, those individuals that worked at LifeSync had worked about 9 months creating relationships with organizations that would then potentially buy the product, Blue Water. And so we felt that from a business continuity effort, at least in the short term, not saying by any means that this is an ongoing, forever relationship, but I didn't want to interrupt those that were working at the big company level. And so I knew that we had our own salespeople in place, and that we had our own sort of national campaign in place before we upset those relationships. So it's kind of no different than any business buying another business, and you don't go and fire your salespeople if you have your own salespeople in. And so that is the reason that we have maintained the relationship with LifeSync this far, and we monitor. I will tell you that from a CEO's position, that they are adding value. Many of those big enterprise organizations came from those introductions that were made by the individuals at LifeSync. Not in their capacity as a legislator or anything like that, but their capacity as 1099 employees who work on their own time. And so they have helped foster and keep this product at the enterprise level, which is where we want it at. We want people to think it's $1 million product, not a $5 product. And so, I mean, that's really it. They're just a sales force, monthly 1099, you know, which is 30% cheaper than somebody that has benefits and health insurance.
Are you saying that Mr. Grant is working, is doing sales, calling and marketing?
Yes, along with Mr. Broder.
Well, how do they do that when they're in the legislature for the last 2 months and getting paid this kind of money? They're not doing any sales, are they, while in the legislature?
They are,
Okay.
and I could substantiate, I mean, I can substantiate that. They have set up meetings. I was in Tallahassee last week, and they helped to foster some meetings that I went to. I guess the nice thing about being when legislation is in session, those big companies actually go to Tallahassee. So I actually was able to have 4 major ones in one day. I don't, let me say this. I am sorry from the bottom of my heart about any ill will that is about that. I think that you've seen the transparency of us in our organization, try to handle your money, which now commingles a lot of my own personal money to make this a success. Regardless of who these people are, if they weren't producing, we wouldn't write them a check. And so they are, remember that Jason Broder came from Procter & Gamble, which has one of the finest sales programs in the world, probably only second to say IBM or Accenture. And so his responsibilities are to sell. And he has created relationships to people that he is talking to, again, at the enterprise level, and setting up meetings for us, myself, Amy, and our chief medical officer to go in and close these sales. I don't think it will be permanent, but it was, in my mind as a CEO, it was the best way to manage a transition without upsetting too many things. There would be too many black eyes to the organization. Because as you know, just like a crop, you have to set the ground, you have to plant the seed, you have to do a lot of things, and you wait until it actually hits the growth phase. But I do not mind answering any questions, showing, you know, we work on presentations together. There are work products to which they're doing it for. I probably talk to these 2 guys 3 to 4 times a day, even during session. So it's not a handout. And it certainly, if it was, I wouldn't hand it out to them because I would just be putting more money into aggressively developing mobile even faster. I would spend it other places. But it's so important on the eve of our sales and marketing phase to actually get this out there, to not take any resources off of that.
Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, I have a question, and it's probably here, and I can't follow it. But can you walk me through, we have coding costs that show up on a couple of different papers. You know, the draw request shows continuum lab billing, coding, design, and QA to the IDA. We, on a separate line item, we have salaries of Hardy County based, which are ultimately going to be, my understanding, the coding, design, and QA people. We have salaries of non-Hardy County based. And I'm not sure if that's any coders involved with that. There's also an invoice from LifeDash to Continuum for coding, design, and quality assurance. And when I look at the numbers, I didn't know whether they were nesting up and only the first page was done, because I can't make that math work. So if you could just walk me through that, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So we do time tracking software and project tracking software across both LifeDash and Continuum. CareSync is built on the LifeDash platform, so there are some native people that do coding and designing at the platform level, as well as the API, which connects or links up, if you will, the CareSync back to LifeDash. So if they're working on CareSync product, which many of them are, because we have coders and designers at LifeDash, then they build Continuum. Continuum then rolls it up to this cover sheet so that everything foots. And so if you add up the invoices and add up the cover sheet, I think I'm only usually off a penny, which there's some rounding error somewhere and I've yet to ever find it, but it should always add within 1 penny. But I think the important, sort of some of the things that you would see in terms of trending is that you would see salaries for Hardy County. When I say Hardy County, these aren't people commuting. These are people that live in Hardy and go to church and do all they do here. That number continues to rise. The training number continues to dip. The mentoring number continues to stay the same. The difference is in how we do that is we have time tracking software. So if I'm spending time with you and mentoring you and so forth, then it becomes a mentoring item. If we're physically doing training, then it's a training item. Otherwise, we're then coding or we're designing. So all the numbers I promise painfully put as being the one that prepares this report each month to know that it does foot. I was told, Doug, how to break these out. So I didn't invent these categories as part of my agreement. So if you think there are some other ways that anyone would ever like to see the numbers presented, including percentages, I would be more than happy to do that.
I'm not suggesting a change, I'm trying to understand what's presented to. Ultimately, the expectation would be, you talked about in April, you roll out, you start to become, to accept some revenue. At some point, as we continue the Hardy County salaries, we would expect to see the LifeDash, QA, coding, and design, those costs would ultimately go to zero at some point down the road.
Well, I think based upon just the life of the grant, they'll go to zero from your perspective. But one of the questions I get asked frequently is that, when is software done? And I don't know the software is ever done. And so I think what the ultimate goal is, though, is to shift those skill sets to Hardy. And so I think you'll see it go zero from there. But I think as you see just kerosene in general, you'll always see updates. If it's not, then you would never see an update and it would get eclipsed by another piece of technology.
But by design, those updates should be coming from what now shows up to be a gross salary Hardy County base.
Yes.
And
And
those
so,
are the guys who
Well, that-
ultimately will be filling that role.
right, and so, and remember that, yes, sir, that is correct, 100%. And so we are pushing that ball as fast as we can down the field. And recognizing that it's always it's a risk balance because, we don't want to, we have taken a lot of time to sit there and hire and train these people. That really was a big drain on the company. And we take our developers that have been doing this anywhere from 7 to 20 years offline to sort of train and mentoring. So it's kind of slowed down, the development of the software. The faster I get it to revenue, and the faster you guys see, that this investment is paying off. So there is somewhat of a risk management going there. Is how much do I let people in Hardy do this if they can't do it as fast?
Getting it to revenue doesn't coincide at all necessarily with the reduction of external coders.
Correct.
I mean, you
Hopefully the
you
revenues
still have
will
the
exceed and
transition.
be
One is to
offset.
make it a commercial product, and one is to get our guys that live here to do that and support that product. Once you roll past April and you start accepting some revenue for some of this, at what point, and I know there's, over the course of this, there's been a huge amount of flux in terms of what the products were, at least in my mind, in my understanding, to where we're at today. What do you see as your projection for when this product will become self-sustainable and wouldn't require any more of bond money or any more of IDA money? But these guys that have been hired are now developing a product that is standing on its own feet in the marketplace.
I think I would have more of a realistic answer in 60 days on what those projections look like. We had given out some projections to say that if we signed up 10,000 families, that would generate $2 million in revenue. That's why I wanted the consumer play, because that's the one that's the most viral and potential. That's whereas the enterprise selling is more of a 6-month sort of sales cycle. I'll share the numbers with you, but, once we get to about the 10 to 15,000 user level, then we are positive cash flow.
And you don't have, or can't give me at this point, an idea of when you expect as a CEO to reach that 10 to 15,000 user level?
Well, no.
Or do you have?
And I don't, and I have projections.
I understand it's a little bit crystal ball, but.
Yeah, I think what is going to be key on the next 60 days is us to see the sales mix. And so how many people are paying us $30 to $99 to go from their data versus how many are paying subscription subscription. Once I have some trending data on that, the crystal ball becomes, a lot more predictable. But at least knowing sort of where my benchmark is, if I have 15,000 users, which certainly not by any means a big stretch, because we're dealing with families, it's not just individuals. So if I sign you up, then all of a sudden you might have 3 or 4 people. We're a break even. I would say that then the challenge for me at the growth stage is to say, if it turns out that, say, 40% of our business comes from the concierge health assistant, then I would continue to hire them as fast as I could here in Hardy, because they're immediately revenue generating, whereas the software took a few years to build before it became revenue generating. So there'll be a flux in the mix, but I think that we figured, some numbers about half and half in our original projections. And so that certainly puts us in at a couple $1 million before the end of the year, if we can meet those projections. But what the pilot determined over the last 30 days is that we don't know how much cost we'll have in actually going and getting the chart. And so those are numbers that we're still working on with the pilots. And so I don't know if it's gonna cost me $20 to get the chart or $50 to get the chart. But even if it costs me $50 to get the chart and we charge them 30, remember that one of the revenue streams from this piece of software is its data. And data is very, very valuable. And so other companies will pay between $5 and say $15 per record per year to have access to that data. And so there are other ways that we make money from the software. So the data wouldn't kick in until we probably had 10 or 15,000 lines anyway. But there are multiple legitimate forms of revenue from the software.
One more question relative to, and maybe the crystal ball, but one of the things that I truly believe in business and home, in any aspect of life, is you can make a prediction, and you can say it loud enough and long enough and hard enough, and that prediction will come true. And it could be, whether you want to develop some illness, you feel sick, you tell, people, you're sick, and eventually you get sick. And my question is this: we have heard a lot of negative publicity about this in terms of Mike Neeson, in terms of some local guys in the area who aren't a huge fan of any aspect of Continuum Labs or LifeSync or the process that has occurred. Has the negative publicity, or what impact is that negative publicity going to have as a self-fulfilling prophecy to make, to hamper your ability to make this a going concern? I'm sorry, that's a big question. Maybe it's not fair, and if you want to think about it, that's fine. But I'm concerned that we can make a prediction and cause it to come true, not because it's the right thing or not because it would have happened, but just because we keep saying the same thing over and over and over again.
I'm glad you asked the question. I'm trying to figure out in a brief way to give you the answer. The biggest risk to this project are the extreme local negative people that seem to hound it daily.
Encourage them.
Pardon?
Don't encourage them.
Well, I don't know how to not do that. They seem to. I think that if you look back at what the original intention for this product was, that we were asked to come in no different than Half Acre. We were the contractors. We were building a product for somebody else. We'd done it before. We had a few centuries of healthcare experience. The risk was low. They have funding. They're making a product. The market's changing. The risks were measurable. All of a sudden, through whatever motivators that I think I'm still just not can't get my head around is that there is this constant, we don't like you in what we're doing, and you go to the Mike Neesons, you go to the St. Pete Times, I get emails at 12 and 2, and we all do, about these things that it is a noose around the neck of morale at Tech Ribbon. It is a noose around my neck. I will tell you that we are now in contact with legal firms. We are looking at ways that we can protect ourselves in your investment and my investment. Part of the original scenario was that I was asked to commit a portion of our company to be purchased as an investment by local investors. I don't know how we do that in this climate. And so as a result, then that forces me to say, I have to sort of put on the bench this stock But if everybody is saying things which aren't really always true about what's the efforts here and just the veracity of it, and the sustainability of it, and then now taking that to literally the national level when you include in the St. Pete Times, which had an inaccurate story. And we probably have a legal defense on things that they printed that weren't accurate. And there are some laws and things in place that the businesses are afforded. Now you sort of hamper the ability to get capital across the world, right? Because now you're in a situation where, we had a great story. Take a small town, take its money, take its citizens, take its energy, put it on a level playing field because of technology and the internet, and let them regrow something, replacing one asset called phosphate for a human asset and skills. I can't measure the amount of harm these people are doing. I personally think they're from the pit and smell like smoke. I think that there's probably a spiritual battle that's well beyond my pay grade here that I just cannot even fathom anymore. But I have never in my life seen such a constant attack that doesn't make any sense. If somebody dislikes a couple of politicians, I get it. But you know what? They didn't waste your money. It stayed here. You might have some critiques of saying, well, you had this on the salary, you did this, or you didn't come back. But it would just be like half acre. They still were the Tech River. They were still slinging hammers. They were still there. You still own the building. I've pledged that I'm not going anywhere. I've guaranteed it. So that none of that investment was lost. And the only change I made to the software was I think I made it less risky by including the consumers. Whereas their model, well, let's just sell to the big companies, and that's where their projections came from, $10 and $20 million. Because yes, when you talk about Blue Cross Blue Shield having 4 million lives in the state of Florida, you only get a few pennies per user per month. And yeah, you generate these huge numbers. But how do you do that? Hire young people, encourage them, and then they go to dinner with people who just are beating the crap out of them. I mean, I'm telling you, we're fighting a war on all levels. And so I think that you've seen me take sort of the Cary Grant approach and try to be a gentleman over the last 6 months and said, okay, we'll get to revenue, that cures a lot of bills, we'll prove them wrong or whatever. But I think that I will just tell you personally, because no one else is listening, that we're going to kick it up a notch, because I don't think that we can continue to be passive and not respond anymore. And it's unfortunate, but I think that our back has been against the wall, and so we both have money on the table, and we both have jobs to do, and I don't want this to fail. I don't think it can fail, but I think it will fail, and if it continues to get the crap beat out of it, then we don't respond. Because I don't begin to understand people's motivations, because you were trying to create value, we're trying to create jobs for your kids. How in the world is that bad? Software is expensive to develop. I mean, it just is, but when we get to sell it throughout the world, when you look at these people who do fertilizing with $25 million a year in sales and all these other things, those numbers are achievable. And our product's a lot less than anything in fertilizer. So our margins are a lot bigger. So I appreciate you answering the question. But I will tell you, it is our biggest risk of failing, is just what they have done and what they continue to do.
Any other questions from board members?
Sarah does have an update on the expenses of the budget related to the building, specifically. But
So we'll let the record show receipt of the report for the month. Thank you very much. And to Travis's point, and I appreciate Doug asking the question before we move on to Sarah, this is one of the things that I feel like we as a board need to discuss with any project that we're funding and truly making an investment in. We need to have some dialogue at our workshop about what is communicated to the public and how we can work together to better insulate these companies that we're working with. This is a true threat to this project and to Travis and Continuum and to the employees. And I think that we all need to have some open dialogue and some discussion and be quite frank. Obviously, there are limitations that we have, and we have to work under the sunshine and all those great things and adhere to the statutes, and those things are paramount. But we need to have some dialogue at our workshop, and everybody needs to put their thinking caps on between now and then as to what we can do to better work with these companies and have a better plan in place to prevent these types of attacks. This doesn't just hurt Continuum Labs. This is our money and our investment in jeopardy. So we all need to have some debate about this at our workshop. Thank you.
At the end of the day, they're not the only ones being poked at. I mean, I see Hardy County IDA being ridiculed in the media left and right incorrectly. And I do think it's something that is a huge risk, so.
The problem is if you tell them that they're, if our thoughts say that we may be waffling, you can't answer these people. Every time you answer these people, they use that for another attack. We have to show solidarity. And I hope it is some things that are offense and not defense.
Madam Chair. Yes. I'd like to address the IDA board on issues that concern me and my son. And I'd like to clarify a few things for the board. Most of you I have spoken with, and I look to see my attorney was here, and he's, yeah, sitting with him in the back, okay. So, Counselor, stop me if I get out of line. In fact, come stand behind me if you will, and just tap me on the shoulder. There have been many, many remarks made about my son, Brian Burge, going to work for Continuum Labs. I would like for this board to know that he went through the workforce just like any other application went through the workforce. I would also like you to know that our county attorney, on my behalf, called the Ethics Commission in Tallahassee and spoke with the main attorney over the state of Florida to see if there was a conflict of interest. There was not a conflict of interest for him to make application with Continuum Labs. I have heard that, just like the rest of you, until I'm sick of it. I have been questioned. He has been questioned. He can hardly walk into a restaurant without someone saying something to him about it. If you looked at his resume, he is just as qualified, maybe more so, because of his technology experience. What if he'd gone to work for you, Doug? Would it have been the same thing? Could he not work for anyone in this county? Any employee